I don't often talk about things I see on the news, but I see something on the news today, and I'm like, that's not right. Uh, there are certain people who report on wrestling that I'm not a fan of because they want the sensationalistic headline, they want the um, gossipy crap out there so that they get more followers on Twitter. They get more people to visit their page on either their website or Facebook or YouTube channel or whatever. Now, I follow Wrestle Talk because they generally don't do that. They don't. They don't start crap. Um, it came out that this one wrestler came out using a Nazi esque uh, outfit and gimmick, and this guy comes out and says, "Oh, I don't like that. This isn't right." Bloody wrestling. Let's rewind. 1991. Sergeant Slaughter, beloved wrestler by many. I was never a Sergeant Slaughter fan. I thought the whole thing was cheesy. I always found USA chants cheesy when you've got two wrestlers against each other who are both Americans, and it happens all the time. It doesn't happen as much as it used to. It used to happen all the time. There'd be two American wrestlers in the ring. The fans would be chanting USA, and I'd be going, "What? Who are they cheering for?" And it used to happen with Hacksaw Duggan, and it used to happen with Sergeant Slaughter all the time. Corporal Kirshner for his brief period in WWE, where Corporal Kirshner was the poor man Sergeant Slaughter. Really, honestly. Um, and so during the Desert Storm War in Iraq, WWE thought it would be really smart to have Sergeant Slaughter carry around an Iraqi flag and swear his allegiance to Saddam Hussein. I really wish I was making this up. And during this period in time, Sergeant Slaughter got death threats, and they were worried about him. And eventually, they dropped the entire thing and turned him back into the American flag waving wrestler he'd always been, in part because of fear. Now, all this guy's doing the other night is coming out with an Iron Cross flag. So it's not a Nazi flag, it's an Iron Cross flag. And on its surface, it's an attractive flag. If you don't get into the symbolism, once you get into the symbolism, you go, I don't think we're going to be flying that. And his name's Blitzkrieg. And of course, Blitzkrieg, Lightning War, World War II. Now, Blitzkrieg's also the name of a song I really like from a band called Death Stars. Great song. I have no idea what it's about. But Blitzkrieg, again, using that word doesn't mean necessarily you're supporting a Nazi cause. Now, here's where it gets tricky. So, this comes out, and it snowballs, and it turns out that this is a 36-year-old man who works as a teacher. His day job is as a teacher, and then on his weekends or during time where class isn't in session, he goes out and wrestles. Awesome. He's not the first teacher to wrestle. I seem to remember a Spike Dudley doing that as well. And there are others. Matt Stryker, when it came out that he was a pro wrestler, it affected his job as a teacher as well. But because somebody decided to take issue with his gimmick, now there's an investigation by the school board, and they're looking into actions, which, I mean, could be anything. It could be a suspension for him. It could be a warning of either you give that up or we're out of here. Your job's gone and we're not supporting you. To deny a guy livelihood, and when it's... The other thing is, the news reported it as he was at an amateur wrestling event. It's all pro wrestling. Yeah, he only gets $100, $200 for what he did if he's lucky, but it's still amateur in no way. Amateur wrestling is Greco-Roman wrestling. That's amateur wrestling. As soon as you're in a ring, you're calling spots, you've got your face and your heel, you're a pro wrestler. This guy is a pro wrestler. Gimmicks like this are not new. And it's funny because the account that tweeted this out about how offensive this was has Jinder Mahal on its... It looks like Jinder Mahal's on the guy's banner. Well, Jinder Mahal is this anti-American character as if he's from India, though he's from British Columbia and he's Canadian. So I'm kind of lost as to how you, again, it's really easy to pick on a independent. So instead of saying amateur, you can say independent wrestler. A guy who's not in one of the big companies, a guy who's wrestling for some southern company. And when you're in a southern company, yeah, it's a weird bunch. And the other part of the news was there were fans cheering for this guy. Fans cheering for him, which is just awful. Yeah, fans cheer for the bad guy. It's been going on since wrestling started. So, this is where when mainstream media touches wrestling, it just makes me just... They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're reporting on. And my concern is that this is now affecting the livelihood of a man who's just going out and just playing the heel. And apparently he's good at it. So here's the trick when you're a bad guy in wrestling. If you're good at it, fans are going to like you. And if fans like you, you're probably going to get turned into a good guy, and then the fans may not like you anymore. It's one of those things that bothers me because, again, teachers don't become independently wealthy. Teachers are not paid extremely well on either side of the border. This isn't an American-Canadian thing. Canadian teachers don't get paid fantastic wages either. And anytime they ask for a raise, everybody loses their brains about it. Like, how dare they, even though you're entrusting your children to them 5 days a week. They should be paid well for what they're doing. But, again, here's this guy who's just going out and having fun, playing this blitzkrieg character, and people are translating signs that are in German. It's like, oh, look what this sign says in German. Yeah, so a fan actually sat down and came up with something German to say that the guy's awesome. Okay. We're not recruiting people into some sort of a weird cult in the wrestling world. It's just wrestling. It's been done for a long time. When Nikolai Volkov used to stand in the middle of the ring and sing the Soviet national anthem, I used to take my hat off and salute the guy. Because, honestly, the crowd booed him the whole time. He had crap thrown at him and was like, you know what? He's a good sport. He's a good sport to stand there and get that whole song out. And Iron Sheik, bless him, standing there with a hand over his heart and waving off fans that are throwing stuff. And just the way that they played it as heels was perfect. As a heel, people should feel like they hate you. But because of the wrestling world being as broken as it is, and what I mean by broken, I enjoy wrestling, but the whole characters and out of character thing has become so muddled, so horribly muddled. It's impossible now to see a guy playing a character like this and not go, man, that's creative. And not take it seriously. So something we might have taken seriously in the 80s, we don't take it seriously anymore. And just ask Jim Cornette about it. He'll get that twitch in the corner of his eye, and he'll spit at you for about half an hour about how the death of kayfabe was the death of pro wrestling. And he's not wrong. Wrestling had to evolve because of the reality TV generation, and I don't think it's helped the product. I don't think it's helped the product in any way, but it's a product. It's a gimmick. They're all gimmicks. I don't understand the idea of threatening a teacher's job when he's a performer. You don't see people looking at a performance in Silence of the Lambs and going, "Then Anthony Hopkins, he shouldn't be around humans anymore." Jack Nicholson after The Shining. Nobody said, oh, stay away from him. And Jack Nicholson has been known to grab a golf club and wail on cars and potentially people. But people understand that when somebody's in a movie, it's a character. Well, when you're in a wrestling ring, or you're approaching a wrestling ring, you're a character. And when you're approaching a wrestling ring, You're getting your character over. It's your entrance. And in independent wrestling, your entrance can be everything. I remember going to All Star Wrestling, I think it was 5 years ago, and it had been so long since I'd seen an event, I didn't know who the good guys and the bad guys were. And sometimes the entrances were kind of ambiguous. So we would go, this guy's cool, we're going to cheer for him. And then I realized that the second time we went, we had it backwards. We were cheering for the wrong guys sometimes. None of you were cheering for the heel. So the wrestlers would give us this weird look, and they would switch. They'd switch places so that the good guy would act like the bad guy would act like the good guy, and it would all switched out. And honestly, if this guy's getting cheered with this character that's this faux German Nazi-esque kind of character, he's doing it well. So now he's going to get punished for doing something well. Because I thought when they showed it, I thought, oh, he must bring out a Nazi flag. Oh, it's the Iron Cross. Is that across the line? Yes. On some level, yes. Absolutely. No argument. Yes. But, you know, really, to blame him because there's people in the crowd that might be doing something a little bit off color, they may not realize just how off color they are. They might be completely in character themselves. I know as a fan, when I've been to wrestling events, especially when I was younger, when I was a teenager, I was quite lippy, and I would yell quite a bit, and I really got into it, and I knew it was set up. I knew it was fake, but I was like, man, I'm gonna enjoy this. I'm gonna be part of this show, and I'd go with friends of mine, and we would all do the same thing. We'd all yell and swear and whatever. And it was part of the show. And I remember my friend's dad sitting there laughing the whole time. He thought it was hilarious. And we were using language in front of him that we would never have used in front of our own parents. Including, I believe my friend that was there with us wasn't allowed to swear at home. But the show, sure. It's an act. Wrestling is not real. The characters that people play are not real. So the idea that somebody's going to get punished for portraying a character in a wrestling ring that's not them, that doesn't have their ideology or their political belief. I mean, if I'd been fortunate enough to be taller and more, built, and I could have gone in a wrestling ring, I would have been a heel. I would have made everybody yell at me, and I would have said anything to turn the crowd against me. If I'd come out and I'd heard the crowd cheering for me, I would have been like, man, I've really got to make sure these people hate me. And I would have said horrible things about their hometown. I would have said horrible things to people in the crowd. I would have been over the top horrible. Because that's part of being a heel. Chris Jericho's fantastic at it. And Jericho said and done things as a heel that he wouldn't say and believe. I know famously there's Wrestling with Shadows, which is a documentary on Bret Hart, and it was before the Montreal Screwjob with Shawn Michaels, and he goes into how, as a bad guy, he has to say things he doesn't want to say, and he has to say horrible things about cities he actually likes visiting, because he has to get the crowd to hate him and boo him, and he has to say horrible things about the United States of America, things that got him threatened, things that got stuff thrown at him, things that made him concerned sometimes leaving a building. Sometimes the things that made him and the rest of his friends in the ring say, we might want to dial this back because we may not get out of here alive. And so for them, and they've got millions of people watching them, to be nervous, I admire the courage of somebody on a much smaller level with a much smaller audience being willing to do something that may offend people. And sadly, mainstream media got it, and we'll see where it goes from here. I'll link to an article regarding this in the description for this video, but I wanted to talk about this before I went to bed tonight because, again, if he's out there, the teacher in this case is out there watching, dude, you're doing everything right. I don't understand this. And if WWE sees this and if he loses his job, I hope they offer him something. Because, again, that love of the business is seemingly fleeting. You look at some of these guys now in the ring and they'll say their lines as they're scripted and their moves are fantastic, but there's no passion. There's no passion. There's nothing on the line. You don't feel like this is anything more than the latest installment, the next chapter, and you're like, there'll be another chapter next week. A good example is the Star Wars movies. So in the original trilogy, when you've got Alec Guinness and David Prowse fighting, it's bad because one can't see and the other one can't swing, and it's the choreography of the first Vader Obi-Wan fight is awful, but there's emotion. It means something. So you go through that trilogy, and it picks up Return of the Jedi. The choreography is better, but it's still not fantastic. There's still things that they do. They overextend their swing in certain spots, and you think, well, if he wanted to kill him, he could have killed him there. And yet, the emotions there, the storyline, everything hinges on this moment. Then you look at the prequels, and they are beautifully choreographed, absolutely fantastic. Every single move is choreographed and practiced for days. So when you're sitting there watching it, you're like, huh, that's a lot of swinging. Yeah, a lot of swinging. The way he's turning his back while he's swinging the sword around is probably not the best move if you're actually in a sword fight. I would think if you're trying to kill the dude, you're not gonna be turning your back and that triple, quadruple somersault, and then he went in the pool, and then they came out, and then they go in that giant room with all the power that doesn't. What? It's overly choreographed, and there's no emotion to it. Nothing. So back to WWE. The way wrestling was, the choreography when it was Hulk Hogan, King Kong Bundy, Paul Orndorff, Randy Savage, the choreography was not anywhere near as intricate as now. Not anywhere near. Now, Randy Savage, Ricky Steamboat put on a fantastic match. So I'm going to back up right on there and say that was a great match. But the wrestling now is so much better, crisper, cleaner, much stronger than what it was back then. And yet, the emotion isn't there. It doesn't feel like there's anything on the line. It's very, very rare that you're watching a match and you go, man, I'm gonna lose my mind if this guy wins. I'm gonna lose my mind if that guy loses. Oh man, I'm really looking. You get really excited for a match, and I used to. I used to get really nervous WrestleMania weekend. I would get really nervous about what might happen and what's going to happen tonight. Oh boy, this is big. I don't feel that way anymore. I sort of go, another pay-per-view. Oh, there'll be another one in 2 weeks. And all of the excitement is gone, and matches I should be really excited about. I go, AJ Styles is fighting against Samoa Joe. Whatever. Oh, Roman Reigns is fighting Brock Lesnar for the 15th time. Oh, Brock might lose this time. Oh, whatever. I don't care. And that's the difference. So, back to this guy. I'm going somewhere with this. Back to this guy. That's the passion in the industry. That's the passion of the business. That's why I like to support independent wrestling. I think that's part of the reason why I support more of the women's wrestling right now than the men's, is because the passion still seems to be there for the women. I don't think they get the big paydays the men do. I think there's a friendly competition between the women backstage, and I think it still matters to them. I think they get a lot less time on screen than the men do, and they do their best to push for more. And I think that's part of the reason why women's wrestling is better. And hey, I will always prefer to watch women wrestling over men. For obvious reasons. I don't understand why guys say, I can't watch women's wrestling. What? Why? It's so much more attractive. I don't understand it. And I could understand it back in the day when you had Trish and Tori Wilson and some the other Tori and and Jackie Gaida and people who couldn't really wrestle. Yeah, the wrestling was awful. You might get a minute and a half, 2.5, 3.5 minute wrestling match, and it was generally awful. The women now can really wrestle. Becky Lynch, I genuinely think, is the best wrestler in the company. I mean that. I think she's the best wrestler in the company. I think her moves are slick. They're fast. They're safe. She's really safe with other wrestlers, and she has a real passion for the industry. And so does a teacher who decides to take on a heel persona that might be a little bit over the line, but it's a character. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I didn't intend to talk this long. It's one of those things that I see on TV and I'm like, they're not reporting on this right. So I felt like I needed to do a video. Thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. I'll talk to you again soon.